Welcome to Mom Boss Central. I'm your host, Alexia Hoffman. This podcast is where entrepreneurial moms like you and me come together for real and raw conversations filled with practical tips, genuine stories, and a whole lot of girl power. But it's not just about listening, it's about building a community. If you haven't already, make sure to join at mombosscentral.com. So whether you're sipping on a cup of coffee, pouring yourself a glass of wine, or tuning in on the go, get ready to join the conversation and become part of our supportive Mom Boss Central community. Tina, welcome to the show. So excited to have you on today. Will you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thanks for having me here, Alexia. My name is Tina Murphy, and I am a life and money coach for widows. I help them create a financial game plan so that they can feel more confident about the way that they spend their money. For me, I unfortunately suddenly lost my husband back and at that time, my boys were 6 and 9, and I was teaching personal finance. And I decided at the end of that year, I was going to not teach anymore because I had the capabilities now. Fortunately, actually, my husband and I were prepared, and we had life insurance. So I decided that I wanted to stay home and take care of my kids. And so I did so, and to deal with my grief and raise the kids on my own. And so in that process, I turned my healing process into an over shopping issue. So that is where I have combined my love for money and helping widows to deal with the way that they're managing their money. And, grief made a huge impact on the way that I was spending. And I didn't even realize it, like here I am, a personal finance teacher. And I'm like, why do I overspend?
Exactly. Yeah. I think, and we spoke a little bit before we started the show, just how it's not spoken about enough. Overspending tied to grief, I think, is something that, I remember when I was younger, my mom had spoken to me about how she used shopping to cope with the loss of her dad. And that was something for me that she mentioned, and it impacted my spending habits until I was an adult and an entrepreneur and I had good income. I think a lot of the time when we tie overspending, or in my mind, it was, oh, if you don't have enough money, then you are overspending. But I don't think that's always the case. And I'd love to hear your take on that, because as someone who had a lot of money coming in, it was where I was spending the money and why I was spending the money that was the
And
issue.
I think that another piece, like you said, is like you either don't have money and that's why you have a problem, or you weren't financially educated, right? And for me, I had both. Like I had financial education, I was teaching it, and now I had I had money that was paying all the bills, but I was still way overspending. And I think for me, in this process of learning about how to handle my grief, I discovered, and I feel like the most underrated financial factor is knowing how to deal with your emotions. Because money is
I love
so
that.
emotional.
Yeah, it
Yes.
really is. In so many different capacities too. Like in our relationships and business, and day-to-day spending, and even tying it to food and
Exactly.
experiences and how we build relationships. It's just so emotional. So I love that insight because, again, it's just not spoken about enough. I think, especially in the business space, I feel that as a woman and a defensiveness around the topic of money, like I need to prove myself, like, oh, I'm making enough money, I can support myself. And, in the sake of transparency, I have really just, my businesses have evolved, my goals have changed. I'm starting a lot of things. I have the Mom Boss Central community. I have my real estate business. And then we bought an old restaurant. That's costing a lot of money. We are doing new construction. That costs a lot of money. I'm starting a coffee shop. There's just all these ventures that cost money. And it's so hard to say, hey, money's tight, especially as an entrepreneur and someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time. It feels just so foreign to say, "Hey, I can't spend money on whatever I want to." That was a really hard thing for me, and my husband is completely the opposite, like, he is frugal, saver, so I'd love to hear your insights on that for entrepreneurs that, struggle with budgeting with the inconsistent income that comes, or they struggle with that overspending tied to emotion. What advice do you
So
have?
first of all, it is becoming aware of what is going on. So the first thing, you got to become aware.
Mm,
You actually have to take some time
yeah.
to do some self-reflection. Like, why am I buying this? Why are we going out and buying, investing in multiple businesses? And those are things that you have to ask
Mhm,
yourself, and also ask them without judgment. And some of us, that's a little
mm,
harder. That's me. I'm really good at judging myself, right? So it's learning how to be
mhm,
curious with yourself and be like, okay, like that makes sense why you were doing this. And then what kind of emotions are running the show? Is it
mhm,
excitement? Is it scarcity? Is it fear? Is it like I
yeah,
need to impress people? Is there, we're
mm,
worried about everybody else. So it comes with, there's two sides of that. One is like the spending part, and then the second part is like the
mhm,
budgeting.
mhm,
This is hard for a lot of us. But one thing I'm learning
yeah,
with budgeting, and first of all, I don't like the word budget because I think it's like the word diet, that it's very restrictive.
mhm,
So I like to call it a
yeah,
plan. So you are going to plan your
I
money
like it.
the way you want to spend it.
Okay.
Yet there's also this other word that I'm starting to add to it. It's boundaries.
Mm,
Like we do,
yeah,
yeah,
ugh,
right?
ugh,
Ugh. But we do
yeah,
have to put some boundaries on our own selves. Like,
yeah,
we have
definitely.
to, not have to, you don't have to. Actually, you don't have to do anything. But it is
Mhm,
understanding where you're coming from, putting some boundaries up, like, yeah, it makes sense that you want to go and, have that. Yet
yeah,
these are our other goals that we have going on. And for me
mhm,
for my clients that are mostly widows, I to help them with boundaries, we create what we call a yes list. So I like to even
mm,
create a yes budget. And everything in the
I
budget
like
that
it.
you're doing in your yes budget is everything you are saying yes to. So if
Okay.
you go to like, let's say you're gonna go to the grocery store, and I love Aldi's. Do you guys have an Aldi's in your area? Okay. And
Yes,
so in Aldi's, there's
yes,
the aisle of shame that has all the fun goodies. Yeah,
all the
right?
fun stuff. Yep.
So those can just like I can catch myself being like, put this in, put this in, put this in, or that what happens at Target.
Mhm,
Well, if
yeah,
I go into the store and I have to tell myself, no, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. Our bodies are gonna be like, but I want it. It's like a little kid.
yeah,
But instead,
yeah,
I have people flip it around and be like, okay, I'm saying no to this because I'm saying yes to going on a vacation or
mm,
feeling more confident
I
about paying my
gotcha.
bills. Or, this is
Yeah,
I'm starting this business. We're buying this coffee shop. What exactly are you saying yes to by you're saying
I
no?
love that.
Does that make
Yeah, that's such a good perspective. Definitely. I think that's huge to reframe the mind work or the mindset and do the work around that. Um, to feel confident in those decisions by having the framework ahead of time instead of relying on our self-discipline in the moment to say, okay, this would what emotion will it bring? One, to acknowledge that and to be cognizant of that is huge. And then two, to say, okay, it's clear that, I don't need this and this is why, this is where the money is better spent. So I love that you are sharing that. And I love the perspective that, it's never crossed my mind. And something that we discussed is as entrepreneurs, there's just so many different
Ooh.
programs available for us. And a lot of the times it's like, how do you know what you need, or how much should I be spending on coaching and software and resources and ads? I mean, you can spend millions of dollars to grow your business if you wanted to. So how to navigate that as an entrepreneur? What advice do you
So I
have?
think it's becoming aware and deciding how much are you willing to invest into it, right? And I think like
Mm,
you hear people say, well, you have to invest in coaching and you have to invest in yourself. Yes, you do.
mhm.
And there has to be a limit
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's always more programs out there. There's always something
Mhm.
bigger, better, a different person. I mean, going into it. So I think for you as an individual, you just have to look at how much are you willing to, how much do you want to invest in yourself and give it a dollar amount.
Yeah. Yeah. I did hear advice one time about coaching, like 10% of your desired gross income for the year, something like that. And I thought that was a nice number, to have a reference to navigate the dollar amount, and then to, you know, to, to figure out how you want to diversify it, whether it be conferences or coaching or online courses, but to have a set number of, okay, 10% my desired income. And they said, obviously, if you want to make $1 million and you're bringing in 50,000, you shouldn't go on the million, but what's like a realistic goal for the year, what you think you can hit if you invest in the right education. And to have those boundaries around it, I think, is so important, because it can feel like, oh, well, if I just invest in this, then I'll scale to the
Oh,
next dollar
yes.
amount, or then it's like
It is
addicting.
because,
So
well, go
I
ahead. Sorry.
think that
I mean, I
no,
think
no, go
that's the
ahead.
thing about it is that we, as entrepreneurs, and especially depending on where the stage is, right? Like if you're in the new stage
Mhm.
and you're like, yeah, but this is going to be the thing that helps me get to that. And I mean, I think the problem with the coaching programs and, they just show you the numbers all the time. Like, oh, if you buy this
Mhm.
program, you're going to make this amount of money. And look at all the people that have made all of this money because they bought my program and worked with me. And so then again, we start
Yeah.
making money be what determines our success. And then we get so obsessed with the
Yeah.
numbers. So sometimes you don't even know what your number is, and so I think if
Mhm.
you're at a beginning stage, like write down the number that you're willing to do and how does that number feel to you?
Mhm.
Like, are
Yeah.
you willing to do
Yeah. That's a great point.
$10,000? Like, is that how it would, if you look back in December and you're like, okay, I spent $10,000 this year on education, how would that make you feel? Because if you
Yeah.
bought a program here and a
Yeah.
program there and a program here and a program there, it can add up pretty fast.
Yeah, it definitely adds up really fast. And then I mean, there's so many expenses as an entrepreneur that where I've struggled with my budget or my plan, whatever you want to call it, is the things that I don't even think about as an
Hmm.
expense. Like, especially with once I have kind of gone into the world of multiple businesses and there's just so many different arms to it. It's like my Google email, my
Yeah.
G Suite, right? Like that's an expense I forgot that I was paying. It's on auto pay. I don't think about it. It's something that I need to have, right? In my mind, that's like a non-negotiable. My website, the hosting fee. So for me, what I've done is like a lot of the annual stuff, but there's so many expenses like that that I've forgotten about. So how would you advise someone to navigate those quote unquote non-negotiable business expenses that do add up? And especially when they're reoccurring, what should someone be
So
thinking
I think
about?
regardless of if you're dealing with your business expenses or your personal expenses, you really do have to start developing a relationship with your money. And that is going to
Mm,
be looking at it, writing those things down, seeing when
mhm.
things come up. So for
Yeah.
myself, and I'm much better at this with my personal things, um you have Christmas that comes once a year. Well, you
Mhm.
spread
Yeah.
out that dollar amount throughout the entire year. So if you want to do,
Mm,
spend $1,000 on Christmas, divide that out by 12, and every month you can do save $100, and then you've got your Christmas. So it's going to be the same that you do
Yeah.
for a business. You will need to think about
Mhm.
what are the things that are showing up in my business,
Mhm.
and when are they due, and how can I start putting money aside for it?
Yeah. Yeah, so something on that topic, as an entrepreneur is a lot of the time we have inconsistent income. And that's something my husband and I kind of have butted heads over because he was used to having a consistent paycheck. He puts away X amount of dollars every week, every month, he has it all like automated to go into saving. And for me, where I struggle is like, well, on the months that I'm making less money, I don't want to have as much go in. But then when I'm making, when I have a busy month in real estate, let's say like spring market comes, I want to, put more in. So what advice do you have? I mean, should it be, I think how he does it is right, unfortunately. Um, like I think he's doing it the right way. It makes sense for him. But also he doesn't have as many, like lately I've had more tight months on my finances because I am starting new
Right.
things. And so it's a lot more expenses in this season. And that's where I struggle to know, should I just continue on and budget and plan accordingly? Or is it okay to kind of have it ebb and flow with my income?
So I would say with this, I have other money coaches that are more keen at answering these questions, because this is a process that I am
Okay.
also still working on myself. So as a money coach, I have to also be okay to say I don't have all the answers. And that is an answer
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
don't have. But there are a lot of money coaches that are in my coaching community that would be great
Mhm.
at answering that question for you. So I'm going to I tell you to phone a friend and ask them this.
Okay. I love that you said that because I think a lot of the times people will just try to have an answer to say something, but it's not always the best advice. So I'm glad that you said that because it makes me feel like whoever I speak to about it is definitely going to
Yeah,
be, confident in their answer. And that's a big deal because our money is
it
a big
is.
deal and it is something that, a lot of people want to weigh in on and they don't always have our best interest. So as a money coach, I mean, how do you navigate someone who maybe is struggling to have the finances, but they're
Mhm.
hiring a money coach, what does that look
So
like?
I think for one, you have to decide for yourself what is important to you, and is your coach listening to you, right? So I think it's just like
Mm,
a financial advisor. I like to create a financial team, like with your financial advisors, your tax experts, your business coaches, your money coaches, the ones that are helping. Are they listening to
mhm,
you? Are they
mm,
also like,
yeah,
I will challenge my clients, but I don't shame them. You know, um,
mhm,
there is
yeah,
a big money coach that does a lot of stuff in, just say his initials begins with a D and an R, and he shames a lot of people. And he makes people feel bad about their
yeah,
money. So if you have a coach
yeah,
that is making you feel really bad, now again, it might there's a difference between bringing up some emotion in you, right? Versus like shaming you.
mhm, feeling
Yeah, telling you, well,
uncomfortable,
that's a stupid
yeah,
choice, because at the end of the
mhm,
day, it's your money, right? Like you,
yeah,
I
yeah,
had clients that I was trying to give her some, like, this is the chip tool that I use, and she's like, you keep telling me that and I don't like it, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna tell you it'll make it easier for you. She's like, I know, but I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
like you have to have that relationship with them, right? Because money is so
mhm,
personal. And I think that,
yeah,
as a widow, I hired coaches. I hired a parenting coach. I hired my own money coach because I didn't have my partner
mhm,
anymore to be talking to them about those things. I needed a sounding board.
yeah,
So whether you are a single
yeah,
person or a married person and you're like, hey, we need somebody to, or I need somebody, or we need somebody to talk these things out with that can be a
Mhm.
neutral party, and
Yeah.
can listen to us and then give us some sound advice. I
Yeah.
mean, even for you and your spouse, I can work with you and your spouse, but I have
Mhm.
other money coaches that are better with couples, you know, and that
Mm.
I
Yeah.
prefer to work with single women. It's, it's a different dynamic when you got two
Mhm.
personalities
Yeah.
versus one.
Yeah, definitely. Talk to me about who should have a money coach or when they should have a money coach. Like if someone has a tight budget right now and they don't feel like they have a margin for a money coach. I mean, talk me through who should be reaching out and what it looks like to work with a money
For
coach.
me, I think everyone should have a money coach. Because, and I think the thing about it is like, there's this belief that like budgets, again, even though I don't like that word, budgets are only for poor people. Budgets are for everyone.
Mm.
Like, let's be real, like
Yeah. Yeah.
multi-billion dollar businesses have a budget. So if you are making
Yeah.
six figures, seven figures, you still need a budget. And it's
Mhm.
going to be a lot because otherwise you're just giving your money to people that you giving it to things or people that you don't even want to be giving it to, right? So really
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
needs a budget. And everyone working with a
Mhm.
money coach because we're not taught this stuff, right?
Mhm.
Even though I taught personal
Yeah.
finance for 16 years, I've still been teaching it at the college level. The concepts are different than the application.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah. That's a great
I
point.
couldn't teach my kids what it's like to have $10,000 in credit card debt. Like,
Mhm.
there's this
Yeah.
feeling in your body, there's these emotions that come up. And so,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good coach is going to help walk you through those emotions, feeling those emotions. So,
Yeah.
like, if you are finding it tight in your budget, well, the good thing is there are coaches that deal with all spectrums in my coaching community. So,
Mm.
like, if you
Mm.
have credit issues, like if you're about to go bankrupt or something like that, I have coaches in my coaching community that are, more qualified to know how that process works. If you are
Mm.
living paycheck to paycheck right now is not just low income people. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
statistic that shows that most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And now with inflation, it's also, you know, affecting all of our
Wow.
budgets and
Yeah.
all of our wallets. So, how do you start looking
Yeah.
at it and
Yeah.
deciding this is what's important to us?
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. And I think there is so much around money and the conversations that we need to be having that are so important for moms to hear and entrepreneurs to hear because I think it can be so isolating and it's not something that a lot of people have the confidence to share. Or you share it with one person who has a very limited perspective. If it's a friend or another business
Yeah.
owner, it's like, their perspective might work for them, but that might not be the best advice for you. So I think that's great insight. I would love to learn more about how you decided to get into the money coaching space after staying home with your kids and what that season of navigating your time from being with your kids full time and then going into the coaching space, what that looked like for you.
So, 3 years into my grieving process, I discovered a lady who was a widow coach. And so I learned about being a life coach myself. And I was like, huh. And
Mhm.
she was like, you like money. Why don't you combine the two together? So literally that's kind of how some of it happened. And I was actually at a money conference and someone put on there on my
Mm.
badge, and I thought I had it, but I'm not sure where it is anymore because I moved. But they wrote on the bottom "Widow Money Coach," and I was like, oh,
Oh, wow.
okay. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
two together. I'm like, okay, let's give this a try.
Mhm.
So It has been a journey because again, I am about, well, November 19. My youngest son was doing middle school, started middle school, and it was not a good fit for him. And so I decided to
Mm,
homeschool him. I kind of
mm.
started that out of a threat, and then he came home. He's like, "I think I want to do this," and I'm like, "Oh God, what do I do?" So I figured it out, and it probably worked okay because
Yeah,
6 months later, what we were all in shutdown. Um, so
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
homeschooling and learning how to run a business and managing all of it at the same time. So it kind of just, yeah, that's kind of the messy journey of it all.
Yeah, well, and that's what we're here to share because I think everyone has those messy sides to running a business, to being a mom that needs to be normalized because we all experience in some capacity. So, with that, I mean, how do you manage your time logistically between homeschooling and taking clients and being on podcasts and doing all the things that you're doing?
Well, with so my oldest son is in college, so he's off. My younger son, now we are doing part-time homeschooling with him, and he goes part-time to the public school because there are certain subjects that I was like, I'm not doing this. So we did a combination
Oh, that's
of
interesting.
the two. And he's because of that, he's also been able to do sports. So that has been a big
Oh,
motivator for
wow.
him. Now, with homeschooling, just so you
Yeah.
know, every state is very different. All their rules are very different. Yeah, I am
Mm,
learning it as a very complicated process.
yeah.
For me, because I do have the afternoon, but raising a kid who I will just be honest, it's has been a challenge because he struggles with his education and sometimes the struggles that he has, I tend to blame myself for when I was first grieving. And
Mm,
so, doing a business and showing it up online requires a lot. And when
yeah.
homeschooling was kind of taking that away, I wasn't doing much for my
Mm,
business. And I've had
mm,
to learn to be okay with that.
yeah.
So it's always a learning process. I think for me, I'm still growing
Yeah.
the business. I think it's, as a teacher, I had clients that just like my students just showed up in my classroom, right? And so
Yeah.
now going
Yeah,
and getting
definitely.
clients to come in is a whole new growth
Mhm.
process. And I think that
Yeah.
running a business really exposes all of your deepest wounds and scaredness and
Mhm.
all of that stuff. And you gotta learn how to
Yeah.
heal that. So, yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
healing multiple healing process, and it's still gonna be that way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, and, like, the insights that you're giving are just so relatable. I think, widow or not, I think that how we transition to entrepreneurs and the healing that we need to do and the mindset work that we need to do applies to anybody because it can be so overwhelming of where do I start, especially as an entrepreneur, the self work that's required and the self awareness that we have to have, whether it's, finances for business, personal finances, scaling our business, managing a budget with, as kids grow older and their needs change and there's sports that come up and there's meals that, now their friends are coming over and we're
Oh,
feeding
yeah.
them. I mean, there's all the different stages. So, yeah, I love that you're sharing this and that you're speaking about it. So thank you for using your story to do like such amazing work and to help other women, progress forward and be better versions of themselves. For our listeners who want to connect with you, where can they find you and what do you offer? I mean, I know you said primarily widows, but talk to me about your
Yeah, so I
services.
do one-on-one coaching, like I said, primarily for widows, but I also do, single women because divorce is a different type of loss, but it can also definitely affect your
Mm,
spending. I honor everyone's losses as very own uniqueness. Even within the widow world, there's did you lose your spouse by a sudden, or was it cancer? Was it long term? So every loss is its
Mm,
own unique um, challenge and journey. And so I love to work with women of all ages. And my handle is Widow's Wallet on IG, Facebook, and Instagram. And then I also have my website, which is Widow's Wallet. So, and I do,
yeah, we'll link everything in the
yeah,
show
and I do
notes.
one-on-one coaching. That's what I do.
Yeah, well, awesome. Thank you so much for being part of the Mom Boss Central community.
Yes.
I think you are such a valuable member. I mean, everyone, it's all about the different perspectives, but everything that you've shared, I mean, even on our networking event earlier this week, the resources that you share, finance related or not, just about productivity and how you run your business and learning that you can homeschool some classes. I mean, that's news to me. I don't know. Just figuring out what works for you, whatever season you're in life and business and parenting. I think that's what it's all about. This community is to just, help each other any way we can. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you're part of the
Yes, I'm so
community.
grateful to have met you too, Alexia.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Mom Boss Central. I hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and maybe even a few new strategies to rock your mom boss journey. Remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And don't forget to share the love with your fellow mom bosses. Make sure to join the community at mombosscentral.com. It's completely free and a space to connect with like-minded women. All you have to do is sign up and start connecting. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and living authentically. We're so happy to have you as part of the Mom Boss Central community.